Hello, you beautiful people. So, I'm back already with the Aglaea vid after posting the Herta kit video, and I'm guessing you clicked on this video because you want to know Aglaea's entire kit in detail and how she functions overall, right? Well, fortunately for you, you've landed on the perfect video to get that info. Today, I'm basically going to discuss about our first limited remembrance character Aglaea's kit in detail, and we'll talk about her basic abilities, her talent, her traces, her light cone, and her Eidolons as well. Along with this, we'll also discuss the entire kit of Aglaea's Memosprite, which is this thing right here. Yeah, all the Memosprites like Aglaea's mannequin do have a unique kit of their own, and you can pretty much think of them as additional characters on the field other than your four main units. Before we begin, if you want some discounts on your Stellar Jade packs, let me just tell you about this site called LD Shop. This site is honestly a great top-up center, and the top-up process is really easy as well because all you need to do is select your pack and enter your UID and server in this box right here. Yeah, that's the entire top-up process. After waiting for a few minutes in the game, I easily received my jades and also saved a little bit of money. By the way, if you register in LD Shop from my link in the description or the pinned comment, you will get an extra 5% off on top of all the other discounts. Alright, just a quick little info that if you spend more than $80 in a single month on LD Shop, you can get a VIP membership for yourself, and if you're curious what this membership does, it basically provides you with a free monthly pass, weekly discount coupons, and some monthly discount coupons as well. Anyways, moving on from the sponsor, let me just say the same old usual disclaimer that this version of Aglaea's kit is not the final one, and changes will probably be made to it in the upcoming weeks, so take all this info with a grain of salt. With that being said, I've already yapped enough, so let's begin without wasting any more of your time or energy. Alright, as usual, starting with some basic info, Aglaea is going to be a lightning type unit who follows the path of remembrance, and she will be the first Memosprite-based DPS unit in the entire game. Honestly, Aglaea's kit is really unique and sounds really fun to play, at least for me, because she will be the first DPS unit who wants to stack as much speed as possible. Now, using all this extra speed, she deals quite a lot of AoE attacks, and all these attacks also action advance her own Memosprite, which in turn deals an absurd amount of damage to all the enemies present on the field. Yeah, that's like the most basic and simple explanation that I could come up with for her kit. Also, Aglaea's Eidolons and her light cone are like insanely broken if I do put it lightly, so we'll also take a look at those, but that is a topic reserved for the later parts of this video. Lastly, regarding her release date, if the rumors about the new banner system coming in patch 3.0 turn out to be true, Aglaea's banner will go live alongside Madame Herta's banner in the first half of the patch. Both of these banners will debut on January 15th for the Asia and Europe servers and January 14th for the America ones. With that, we're entirely done with the basic introduction of Aglaea, and moving on, let's finally take a look at her kit in detail. Okay, if you've been a long-time viewer of mine, you already know that I usually start all the kit videos discussing the basic attack of the unit first, yeah? Well, for Aglaea, I think I'm going to break this tradition because I feel like it makes much more sense if we go in reverse and discuss her talent first, because that would make her kit easier to understand. Alright, first of all, you guys really need to meet someone, and this someone is none other than Aglaea's Memosprite, who is named Garment Maker. This mannequin has an initial speed of 40, and their max HP scales off around 66% of Aglaea's max HP. Basically, Garment Maker inherits a lot of Aglaea's initial stats like her attack, her crit and crit damage, and all that stuff. As I stated beforehand, by the way, all the Memo Sprites have a unique skill set of their own, just like Garment Maker, and having these unique abilities makes all these Memo Sprites fundamentally different than the normal summons like Lightning Lord or Fuyuan. Moving on, I think that was a pretty good introduction that you guys just had with the Garment Maker, right? Now, seeing as we're already going in the reverse order by discussing the talent first, let's continue in this order and take a look at Aglaea's ultimate next. So, Aglaea's ultimate is quite literally the most important part of her kit in my opinion, and it has an absurd cost of around 350 energy. Yeah, you did hear that correctly, but don't worry. I think her ultimate is the most stacked ultimate in the entire game, so this 350 energy cost is quite justified as well. Okay, for starters, whenever you use Aglaea's ultimate, she summons her Memo Sprite Garment Keeper onto the field. Now, in a scenario where you use Aglaea's ultimate while Garment Keeper is already present on the field, her ultimate just heals her Memosprite to max HP, which is honestly quite convenient to have. Other than summoning the Garment Maker, her ultimate makes her enter the Supreme Stance state as soon as it is used. Alright, I'm guessing most of you guys know how Firefly's complete combustion state works, right? Well, Aglaea's Supreme Stance state is honestly really similar to Firefly's complete combustion state, as it gives a 100% action advance as soon as she enters it, which basically means that Aglaea takes a turn as soon as you use her ultimate. This ultimate also makes it so that Aglaea gains the extra speed stacks from Garment Maker's talent, and I know we haven't discussed this talent yet, but don't worry, we're going to take a look at it later on. Anyways, this ultimate also enhances Aglaea's normal basic attack to an enhanced basic attack, which is the way Aglaea and her Memosprite do majority of their damage. Finally, as soon as you use her ultimate, a countdown appears in the action bar similarly to Firefly's ultimate or Robin's ultimate. And this countdown has an initial speed of 100, which is not that bad considering we want this countdown speed as slow as possible. Now, when this countdown ends after Aglaea takes a lot of turns, she will leave her Supreme Stance state, and the Garment Maker also self-destructs until the next ultimate or skill usage. By the way, I know some of you guys might be worried about that insanely high 350 cost ultimate, but she obviously has ways to get around it, otherwise she would literally be an unplayable unit. Continuing on the reverse order, Aglaea's skill is also pretty much focused around the Garment Maker, as it says that upon use, her skill heals her Memosprite to 50% of its max HP if it's already present on the field. Now, in a scenario where the Garment Maker is not present on the field, her skill summons her Memosprite temporarily, and the Garment Maker takes a turn as soon as it is summoned. Overall, a pretty decent skill, as it provides another way for Aglaea to summon her Memosprite other than her ultimate, and also provides a bit of healing for the Garment Maker. Alright, we've actually reached the end of discussing her kit in the reverse order, as we're finally going to discuss her basic attack at last. So, this is Aglaea's normal basic attack, and it's very generic for a DPS unit and not really worth using like ever, so you don't really need to keep this one in mind at all. What you do need to keep in mind though is Aglaea's enhanced basic attack that she gets after she uses her ultimate and enters the Supreme Stance state. So, whenever Aglaea uses her enhanced basic attack, she and the Garment Maker launches a joint attack on the enemy, and this attack deals a huge amount of lightning damage to the main target and also deals a decent bit of lightning damage to the adjacent targets as well. Basically, her enhanced basic attack is her main damaging ability, and honestly, this part is the best part of her entire kit just because of that joint attack that Aglaea does with the Garment Keeper. By the way, for someone who might be confused, this enhanced basic attack is not a one-time use either, as it lasts for the entire duration of her ultimate. Anyways, with that, we've finally discussed Aglaea's entire base kit in detail, and I tried my best to simplify it. From this point on though, I think her kit will start making much more sense as we're finally moving on and taking a look at the Garment Keeper's exclusive talents. Yeah, the Garment Maker have their own unique talents which are exclusive to them, and I'm guessing all the future Memosprites will also have their own unique talents as well. Okay, starting with the Memosprite's first talent. This talent is dependent on a part of Aglaea's own talent that I haven't mentioned up until now, and this part says that whenever Aglaea attacks an enemy while the Garment Keeper is on the field, she applies an effect called Seam Stitch to this particular enemy. You all got that, right? Now, according to the Memosprite's first talent, whenever the Garment Keeper attacks an enemy who has the Seam Stitch effect applied onto them, the Memosprite increases their own speed by a total of 69.6, and this speed increase can be stacked up to a total of 6 times. Yeah, you heard that totally right, and the Garment Keeper does increases their own speed by a total of 417 at the maximum amount of stacks. Honestly, a 417 speed increase sounds like a fever dream, but it's actually quite real. And moving on, do you guys remember that when we were discussing Aglaea's ultimate, I mentioned a small part which said that Aglaea inherits the speed stacks from the Garment Maker's talent while she enters her Supreme Stance state? You do remember that, yeah? Well, I think most of you already made the connection that Aglaea also gains a huge 417 speed buff during her ultimate, and will quite literally have the fastest team in the entire game with Aglaea. You can pretty expect Aglaea and the Garment Maker to take around 5 to 6 turns and deal a huge amount of damage through the enhanced basic attack in a single cycle, which honestly sounds kind of insane. Next up, the Memosprite's other two talents are pretty simple as compared to the first one, but they're pretty good utility-wise, so that's quite nice. Okay, The Garment Maker's second talent makes it so that whenever it is summoned on the field, they action advance themselves by a total of 100%, which basically means that the Garment Maker always takes a turn whenever they're summoned on the field through Aglaea's ultimate, talent, or her technique. Lastly, the third talent just says that whenever the Garment Maker disappears from the field, they give Aglaea a total of 20 energy, which is really nice because it helps Aglaea a little bit with her absurd 350 cost ultimate. Overall, all the talents of the Memosprite are pretty decent, and that first talent is just actually insane. I have to say, it feels kind of weird that I've discussed 4 talents in this video so far, but I guess that's what the Remembrance Path is all about, yeah? Finally, we're already at the last part of Aglaea's kit, and I'm obviously referring to Aglaea's own traces, which are all really good and kind of complete her kit in a way. Starting with her first trace, this one says that whenever Aglaea uses her own skill or enters combat, she gives a decent damage boost of around 30% to the Garment Keeper, and this buff lasts for a total of 5 turns. This one is pretty much like a permanent damage boost to the Memosprite because the buff lasts for 5 turns, which is the normal amount of turns that Aglaea takes herself while she is in her supreme stance state. Oh, by the way, maybe I forgot to mention, but Aglaea cannot use her skill while she is in her ultimate state, so do keep that one in mind. Her second trace is a pretty good one of the best utility traces because it makes it so that whenever Garment Keeper disappears from the field, Aglaea retains a single speed stack from her Memosprite's first talent. Now, whenever the Garment Maker is resummoned on the field, they gain back this retained speed stack, which essentially means that the Garment Maker will always have more than 109 speed whenever they're resummoned either by Aglaea's ultimate or her skill. Pretty good utility trace, and that's kind of it. Finally, I was saving her best trace until the last, and this trace is just actually really insane. Okay, so this trace says that while Aglaea is in her ultimate or the supreme stance state, she increases her own attack and the Garment Maker's attack, and this buff scales off Aglaea's own speed and the Garment Maker's speed. Now, if Aglaea was like a normal DPS, this trace would not be that useful, but well, do keep in mind Aglaea and her Memosprite speed is usually more than 400 during the supreme stance state, which makes this attack buff quite huge, and I think most of you guys get how insane this trace is, right? All in all, she has really good traces, especially that last one, and it makes me really glad that Aglaea does not any kind of useless traces like a lot of DPS units do. Alright, with that done, we've discussed Aglaea's entire kit in detail, and I really hope that you guys understood my explanation. Lastly, let me quickly tell you guys about her light cone and her Eidolons as well, because I know that a lot of you guys might be aiming to vertically invest in Aglaea. Okay, starting with her light cone, it first of all increases the wearer's base speed by a total of 12, which is not like an insane amount, but it's still pretty nice to have. Now, other than the speed increase, her light cone states that whenever the wearer and their respective Memosprite attack an enemy, they get a single stack of brocade, and this brocade stack increases the wearer's crit damage by a total of 15%. Basically, this is like a permanent 45% crit damage boost to Aglaea because these brocade stacks can be stacked up to a total of 3 times. Additionally, whenever you reach the maximum amount of brocade stacks, which pretty much means that whenever you get a total of 3 brocade stack, each stacks also increases the wearer's basic attack damage by a total of 15%. Essentially, this light cone gives a permanent 45% basic attack damage boost to Aglaea. Honestly, this light cone is insanely good for Aglaea because most of her damage comes from her basic attack, and if you've already decided to pull for Aglaea, you should definitely consider getting this light cone as well. Lastly, taking a look at her Eidolons, I will keep this part really short, but I have to say, Aglaea might just have the best vertical investment potential in the entire game because pretty much all of her Eidolons are insane, and yes, even her E4 is really good. Alright, starting with her first Eidolon, this Eidolon basically gives Aglaea and the Garment Maker around 50% defense ignore on all their attacks, and it's the classic E1 bait again. A 50% defense ignore is genuinely really huge though, and if you've also pulled for Sunday's E1, both of these Eidolons combined gives Aglaea's Memosprite around a 90% defense ignore, which is just broken. Moving on, her E2 increases the maximum stack limit of the speed boost from the Memosprite's talent by a single stack, and now Aglaea and the Garment Maker can stack that speed boost up to a total of 7 times. Her E2 also makes it easier to get those speed stacks as well, so that's pretty nice. Overall, A pretty decent Eidolon, and that's all there is to it. Next up, her E4 increases the damage taken by target who is inflicted with the Seam Stitch state, and it also makes it so that whenever Aglaea or the Garment Maker attacks this particular enemy, they regenerate a total of 20 energy. Yeah, this is one of those rare times when an E4 is actually useful, and honestly, Aglaea's E4 might be one of the best ones in the entire game because it pretty much solves all her energy problems. Finally, her E6 increases her own and the Garment Maker's lightning resistance penetration by a total of 20%. Additionally, this Eidolon also makes it so that whenever Aglaea or the Garment Maker is action advanced, her next enhanced basic attack deals increased damage, and this buff scales off Aglaea's and the Garment Maker's respective speed. All in all, her E6 is broken like most of the other E6, and it also synergizes really well with units like Sunday, who can action advance Aglaea a lot of times. Anyways, with the Eidolons section being done, I've covered all the info that we have on Aglaea's kit as of now. I think her kit is really unique, and I'm pretty sure this kit is one of my favorite ones already just because it seems really fun to play, and it's quite different from a normal DPS kit. How do you guys feel about her kit though? I kind of want to know how other people thought about her kit, as she is our first remembrance unit as well. Also, if you somehow managed to watch until the end and enjoyed watching the video, you might want to consider subscribing as well. With that being said, I just want to say the usual that I love y'all, and I will see you in another one.